It is completely not fair for children and the outcome of their lives to be affected by whether you're born into a rich family or not.
Do you have a view on private and public? Do you think it should just be one system?
We need to just invest in young people, invest in education and invest in schools, whether that's the physical buildings or whether that's what's happening within them. One of my friends' schools, they are now teaching science lessons in the main hall within the whole of year 10 because they don't have enough science teachers because there's a national teacher crisis.
I must get this clear. I had a really bad time in education. Boarding school people up so much. No one's really prepared to hear this and everyone says it's a privilege and stuff, but it gives you terrible mental conditions.
Going from something as soul nourishing as teaching and then moving into something like TV where there's none of that, it was actually a very difficult move because it is the most beautiful job. Working with young people is the most rewarding and wonderful thing ever.
Isn't there a discussion though around how much we value teachers?
Here's another timely re-release given the recently announced Labour focus on early years education. Author, documentarian and former secondary school teacher Mehreen Baig makes a compelling case that failure to invest in young people in general, and education in particular, is storing up problems for societies for years to come. She speaks passionately about how it's not fair for children and the outcome of their lives to be dependent on whether they are born into a rich family or not. And I certainly give her my view on that too. And says that most people can't comprehend the full extent of the mental and emotional workload of being a teacher. Check it out. Welcome to the podcast, Mehreen. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
So Marie, what's keeping you up at night?
Oh, I'll tell you what used to keep me up at night when I was teaching, marking.
Oh, God, yes.
Marking would keep me up at night.
What were you teaching?
I used to teach English at GCSE and
so
A-level.
that's the worst because you've actually got to read the essays.
Hang on,
would it be typed?
No, it'd be hand. I mean, coursework, when I first started, it was the days of coursework. So that was typed. But most of it was kind of handwritten classwork and homework, essays and descriptions that went on for pages.
Yeah, and you'd think, I don't really want to set homework because if I set it, I'm going to have to effing mark it.
I actually just didn't really mark homework, I've got to be honest. You've got to find shortcuts somewhere. I'd mark classwork, and our faculty came up with the policy a couple of years into my teaching that we would not mark homework.
Oh, that's quite cunning.
The amount of work that teachers have to do, just in the very basic level of teaching, I'm not talking about any of the other stuff that comes with the job, any of the emotional stuff, any of the pastoral staff. I don't think any regular person can comprehend it until they've given it a go.
What do you think about how to keep order? I mean, I'm old enough and went to private school that actually some very corporal punishments still existed. It was still rarely used. One of the older history masters used to have this block of wood, and then if you weren't like paying attention, he would chuck it across the room and it'd be like bang behind you. He was actually this incredible teacher. Like, he was amazing and he came from another world, you know, and he was very funny too, but he was an old guy and he had his techniques, and it's like teachers develop techniques to keep order. How does someone keep order?
I genuinely believe that, particularly with the age group that I taught, so if you look at kind of 11 to 18-year-olds, if you look at teenagers, I think if you can convince and show young people that you genuinely care about them.
About them, not the subject.
About them.
About them.
More than anything, that you actually care about them. So if you enforce discipline and you say, don't swing on your chair, I don't want you to hurt yourself, rather than don't swing on your chair because I said so and I'm the leader of this place, I think 99% of the time that's reciprocated. So I don't think I can probably count the number of times I shouted in a classroom on one hand. And even then, I'm trying to think of more than like one time that I had to actually shout.
But that's quite good because you're holding it in reserve for when you really, really need it.
And then they know they've really, really upset you. If you end up.
How do you show you care about it? When the classes get big, that gets harder?
Of course it does. And right now the classes are getting bigger and bigger. In a school, one of my friends' schools, they are now teaching science lessons in the main hall with the whole of year 10 because they don't have enough science teachers because there's a national teacher crisis. So you've got 150 kids in a hall and then a teacher at the front trying to teach them. So obviously it gets tricky, but thinking back to when I was in the classroom, I think you've got to give them love. And I think you've got to give them respect and then hope that that's reciprocated. The truth is, you can't hit them. There's not much you can do. So
okay, so you were teaching in the schools for a while, and I mean, I think, okay, A, it's really hard to be a teacher. B, the class is getting bigger and all the political problems that this country is facing and has been facing for decades, I guess. But on another level, it feels like we can't seem to change education really or is education changing? Can we change it to prepare, the principle of education is
should we still be teaching English because nobody
the principle of education is to prepare people for society, yet we don't teach people some of the most basic stuff. So, I always have this argument about bullying. There's a lot of bullying in school. You can't stop bullying. It's like trying to stop drugs, but maybe we should teach people why and what it is and how you should deal with it and stuff like that. But the base question, the curriculum doesn't really change that much, does it? For decades and decades,
it's been a weird one because every time we've had a new education secretary, everyone wants to kind of put their own stamp on it. So they make a change, but the change is nonsense. The change is not with children's best interest at heart. The change is a load of shit and made by
whatever their fetish happens to be.
Well, it's also like the changes are made by people who haven't stepped foot in a school, a state school in particular, like probably in their whole lives. They don't actually know what children need right now. And they, like I say, they do it just to put their own stamp on things, but without any real knowledge of and thought behind what we're doing. I completely agree. For years, things like, particularly personal PSHE, so personal social, bullying, drugs, sex education, all those kind of things, but also how to apply for a mortgage, demystifying university, applying for courses, how do you go through clearing, all those things haven't been taught. PHSE when I was teaching, it was very much a tick box exercise, like half an hour a week, let's just get it done. The lessons are prepped for you, because we didn't really, you've got enough to deal with without having to deal with that extra half an hour lesson that you have to do. You haven't got specialist teachers teaching it, and subject teachers don't have the time and the effort and the energy to put into it. So absolutely, I think it's a mixture. It's not like abolish maths altogether. Some people are great at academic subjects and we should be teaching those things too. But yes, there are other things we should be introducing. But how can schools do that? There's no money in schools. There's no time. How can you make any of those changes?
It's very much the train is running, isn't it?
Yeah,
how do you change the wheels?
I remember... Okay, so my sister's a teacher too, so is my brother, so is we come from a family of teachers. So me and my sister, both professionals, both teaching young people, both clever. We set off a few years ago and we said, we're going to buy mum and dad a house. And we were like, we think we've got enough money. What do we do? Okay, so we're going to head off to the next, the person on the high road. There's a shop there and we're going to go there and we're going to say, let's get a mortgage. And we went there and they laughed in our face and they were like, firstly, you don't have enough money. Secondly, this is what you have to do. We didn't know because we weren't brought up in a family where we had those conversations around dinner table where my dad could help me and teach me how to do those things. We were just two clueless young women trying to buy a house, working really bloody hard, trying to buy our parents a house. And we should be teaching, particularly these kids who aren't having those conversations around dinner table. They don't have networks. They don't have parents to guide them through these things. Who's teaching them? Schools should be teaching them. But schools can't because they're dealing with all of the other stuff that's coming along with these budget cuts.
Do you have a view on private and public? Do you think it should just be one system?
Yeah, I've got a very strong view on it. I'll give you a bit of context behind this. So, okay, the pandemic. During lockdown, schools were shut. My sister teaches at a private school.
Right.
And her students continued throughout the pandemic. That doesn't mean the pandemic wasn't difficult on all young people and all people in general, but her students received their lessons online with their class teacher according to their school timetable for the duration of school closures. Where I taught, the same school where my sister actually attended as a student next to my primary school in an area called Tottenham, the majority of our students didn't have laptops. So they essentially, for a great chunk of that school closure period, did not have any lessons at all. They missed out on all of that time. If you think about the students who would have been in year 10 and 11, that 2-year period. Those are the two most important educational years of their lives, where they're going to then sit their GCSE exams by the end of it. And then that's going to determine if they get to go on to higher education, or if they get to apply to jobs with those grades. Imagine the impact that had on those students. It is completely not fair for children and the outcome of their lives to be affected by whether you're born into a rich family or not. I have taught students who are so incredibly bright, so incredibly hardworking. These are students who come from perhaps single parent families where their mums are nurses and working night shifts. So the student is going after school to pick up their younger sibling from their school, going home, making both of them dinner, doing maybe the younger siblings' homework with them, trying to get their own one done, so on and so forth. You get the picture. I had students who used to go and clean toilets with their mum before school in the morning, before then getting to school to do their school day. And then you've got those same students who are in the state education system where the class sizes are getting bigger, where they've got 33 kids in a class, where it's impossible for teachers to give each one the kind of attention and support that they need. And then you've got some kids who have 3 students in a class. It's basically private tuition. My sister, some of her classes have like 1 kid in there or 2. This disparity, like, I just don't understand in what world that is fair, that the outcome of your whole life depends on how much money you're born into.
Well, I have to say something, which is, I think you're focusing that it's just about money. In my experience, it's actually a huge amount about parenting. So you can get a good education for your kids if you're willing to just fight like hell, move out of London. I mean, my friend, he moved to Camden, live in a fucking tiny little basement flat, so his daughter go to Camden Girls. I mean, it's actually, to me, there's a huge element of how lucky you are with your parents, whether or not they are, they got the time alive, in some sort of place that they can fight your corner. So I think we have to be careful in the argument, because it's always the way the narrative is run now, that it's just like these people with money, because it's almost immediately saying these bunch of people are bad. Now, look, I'm sure there's some stockbrokers there or people who inherited money that probably might be arseholes because they don't appreciate it. But there's lots of, doctors and accountants or whatever they are. No, but, people are hard. So I think there's layers to it. So with money, you can get private healthcare, you can get private education. And that is, better on the whole. It depends, but it is better on the whole than, what is the state able to offer you for free. Within the state system, you can fight to get your kid to the better place. And also, if they're very bright, as you name, there is a lot of scholarships at private schools and stuff, but you got to fucking be on it. Again, you got to be on it.
But I suppose the thing that you were saying at the start of it, which was, it's a lot about the parents.
Yeah, it's about parenting as well as money.
If you've got those kind of parents that really push for the best for their children, having to send their kids to state schools, I think potentially there would be a load of people fighting to make state schools better.
Exactly that. And can I interject?
As the guest, you may.
I'm not at all, you're right, I'm not at all saying that all rich people are bad, all rich people are evil, it's those rich people's fault. I'm not saying that at all. However, I think there's a real, is danger the right word? It's wrong to say that it's about parenting, because there are parents who are fighting to put food on the table for their children right now. So, and a lot of these parents may not be able to speak the language properly. I
don't think it's wrong, but there might be parents
they are parents who are good parents. They care about their children, but they can't just
let's take an even more extreme example. Both your parents die. Now we're in a place where a lot of people may argue that it's the system's responsibility to level things up. Okay, so now let's take me. I'm privileged, yeah? And why am I privileged? I'm literally tick every box. I went to the best schools, blah, blah, blah. It's not just my dad who fucking bust his ass, my granddad, So I've been lucky. If you look back through the chain, it's like generation after generation have slowly built and built and built to get me living on the shoulders of giants. So what I recognize is that my privilege is not built of, oh, your dad's rich and it's all right for you. It's like, Well, no, lucky enough, none of my grandparents and parents have died really young, and they've all worked their asses off, and they've gone from sort of being a little bookkeeper in Norwich to being in the Norwich Union to one of them suddenly becoming an accountant to finally setting up an accounting business to my dad building an accounting. Then that's just one chain of it. So I think I'm not, exactly by saying, well, it's your fault as a parent. Nah. But I think we have to recognize that are we saying that it is the responsibility of the system to level things up? Because if it is, you give up as a parent to some extent because you say, well, it doesn't fucking matter what I do because they all end up with shit.
I don't doubt that your family built, and not everyone is kind of like, rich. A lot of rich people became rich because they worked bloody hard and they grafted and grinded to get there. Yes. But the idea that this country operates as a meritocracy is a lie. It's a myth. And there are people who work really, really hard.
I said that though, did I?
No, but I'm saying that you can't just say...
A meritocracy is somewhere where
if you work hard, you will make it.
Everything will be fine.
No.
But I think it's that, well, I've got 2 points, but I think it's that point that Rena made in the podcast the other day about it's not about trying to make things equal. It's about equity, trying to make things fair by evening the playing field for people that don't have as much.
Boarding school fucks people up so much. No one's really prepared to hear this, and everyone says it's a privilege and stuff, but it gives you terrible mental conditions like sending you away. It was to build people in the empire. Everyone's like, oh, lucky you. You're not allowed to complain. But those people suffer from something called survival mentality, which people who went to prison or in care had. And it connects. So the weirdest thing is people who went to boarding school have this connect with people who actually come from some of the most deprived homes. And there's this really weird connection. So it's just really complicated.
You are absolutely right. And I was one of those people, admittedly, who when my sister was joining a private school after doing 15 years in state, I was like, how can you do that? Like, you cannot join the dark side. You cannot go.
Splitter!
And 1 year into her being in the private school did change my perception of kids who go to private schools, and they have their own sets. So kids are kids, and neglect can look different in different circumstances. Yep. And so you're completely right that just because you went to a great boarding school, yes, it comes with many, many privileges that will set you up really well in life. But at the same time, there are lots of issues that come with that. And I completely hear that and understand that.
Not so great.
Yeah.
Totally get that. Equally, obviously, psychology not so great when...
things are shit.
When all sorts of shit is happening, like I wrote a eulogy a month ago for one of the students that we taught who was shot in the head. Wow. He was not part of any gang or anything. And when a newspaper article went up about it, people commented saying, one more gone, good riddance, must have been in a gang, so on and so forth, with no real idea. I remember one of our boys after school, we were driving to the gym after school, me and a colleague, and we saw he was on the floor and he had a knife to his neck. He was about to be stabbed. The teachers, who are now also police officers, because our resident police officer, due to budget cuts, has to now be shared with 3 other schools. So we only have him 1 day a week rather than having him every day. So now
you have a resident police officer in the
We
school?
had a resident police officer, but now we don't have them. Teachers have to patrol the high road and the local park until 5:30 every day to make sure nothing kicks off. That boy was on his way to his grandfather's 80th birthday party, but some boys recognized him as, well, not being from the ends and were about to stab him. And he was a couple of months away from his GCSEs. The next day, if that was any regular person or a person who wasn't a black boy from Tottenham, they would need therapy. They would have some sort of support. He had to make that same journey on his way to school and on the way back the following morning because there were no allowances made. There was no support put in place because what can you do? That's just a part of their regular life. So one of my sister's students, he could barely speak. He was very nervous, very anxious, and not very bright. He was like a solid grade 2 across everything. And my sister contacted his father and said, this was in the private school, and said, I'm a bit worried that we don't think he's actually going to pass any of his core subjects. We don't know what's going to happen. And, you could barely get a whisper out of him. Yeah. And the dad walked in and he said, you've wasted my time by calling me in. I don't care because I'm going to buy him a business when he's older, and he will employ people and pay them to do the job to make sure it's done well. So he won't have to do anything. So it doesn't matter.
Get over it.
Now, how is it fair that you've got some kids who work so hard and fight against all the odds and come out with their grade 9s and grade 8s with stories you cannot comprehend? And then you've got this grade 2 kid who can barely whisper a word, who's going to end up being a CEO of something.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't end up being a CEO, maybe of a fake company of his family. I think that's an outlier. I think always difficult in life is we always end up so shaped by the outliers, which is what we all envisage in our heads. You know, it's like we were talking about the word rape. You say rape, people envisage a woman being dragged down an alley, and it's like, well, actually, it's so much more grey than that, you know.
My brother-in-law very firmly believes in you shouldn't send your children to private schools because he believes that we should be supporting the state system, right? The 3 eldest all went to state school. But, you know, those 3, they went to a pretty bad state school. But in some ways, it actually benefited them because they're all really bright. And, you know, they've all gone to Cambridge.
You can be better self-motivated.
But the youngest one, is dyspraxic and dyslexic, and my brother-in-law has actually ended up sending her to a private school for her GCSEs. But you know, my point is that their needs are very different because they're very different children, and you know, some people are bright and some people are stupid, and like we've got to, you know, presumably one of the things about society is finding a way to help those people that don't have those like natural abilities.
Mm-hmm. Special educational needs is a really, really interesting, that could be a whole podcast by itself. My best friend has been fighting to get some sort of support for her daughter who has special educational needs, and the levels that she has had to go to in order to, like, you've got to fill out these forms and you've got to go to this meeting. You need to know who, like, to contact a Senko, but then you've got to go to an educational something. Even I don't really know.
You kind of need to know what you're doing.
You need to know what you're doing. My mum and dad wouldn't even. And my mum and dad, you know, they've got degrees from Pakistan. They're educated. They can speak the language. But they wouldn't know where to even begin. And you look at somewhere like the school where I taught, where hardly any children had, and a lot of them probably had learning needs, but hardly any of them actually had it kind of on the system with any support. And then you look at somewhere like my sister's school, where nearly every single child has got some sort of diagnosis because their parents can afford to get them that diagnosis. And sometimes it's not even, I don't even think it's real. It's like, oh, actually, Betty is allergic to air. I don't think Betty is allergic to air and needs extra time, but you could pay for it.
I like the fact that she's called Betty. What do you think then about things like careers advice in schools? Because
it's terrible.
It's terrible.
I mean,
it's worse than terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if they just gave you an hour with an actual, I don't know, an entrepreneur or someone actually knew something about the world and ask you what you're good. I mean, we do it, and I sit and meet kids. It's like, well, what are you good at? What are you not good at? You organised this, that, and the other. There's some suggestions.
I'm Pakistani, and I only knew that you can be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, and that was
those
options.
are the only things you can be, just to be clear. That's it.
Accounts.
And there was no such thing as careers advice. No teacher. My mum thought I failed in life. She wasn't happy about that. Yeah. I was supposed to be a doctor. But yeah, careers advice when I taught, non-existent. And when I was at school myself, non-existent.
I mean, is that in your ideal world tomorrow, if we could wave a magic wand, one school system?
Yes, definitely.
You know all the schools are falling down?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because of the type of concrete and aerated.
I guess it's not schools falling down.
I always find it fascinating that someone's built a building. When you read it, it says, so they built these buildings which are going to last 30 years. I mean, who would ever build a building that would last 30 years? I don't know. But I don't think there is. I mean, if you have any comment.
I mean, my answer will nearly always come down to funding and the fact that we need to fund schools better, particularly state schools. I think that we need to, and that concrete comes into that along with everything else. I think we need to just invest in young people, invest in education and invest in schools, whether that's the physical buildings or whether that's what's happening within them. And I think all the people who moan and say, teachers shouldn't be striking and they should just get on with, they just don't want to teach, they're being lazy.
Who says that, by the way?
Everyone says that. I got into many Twitter spats before I wrote my book. Like, so that's the reason
say that about
why.
Doctors too. You know?
They do,
it's
but
bullshit.
what they don't realise...
I just never met anyone who would say that. If they would,
what they don't realise is that right now you don't care because you believe it doesn't affect you. Right? Fine. It's somewhere to free babysitting, somewhere to send your children, fine, so you can go to your yoga class. Now, when in a few years' time, those young people who are poorly educated in poor conditions, who weren't given the emotional or academic support that they needed, when they grow up and become part of society, you are going to be, it will affect you. You are going to have an increase in poverty, an increase in crime, an increase in all these things. And then you will care and you will wish that you had invested more in young people 10 years ago.
I think generally we haven't got enough money, but I think Labour will get in and they will spend more money on
money when
education.
they want to find money. They find money for the things that they want to find money for. So fucking feed the children and give it to schools.
Isn't there a discussion though around, and it's a kind of perennial discussion around how much we value teachers? Like, because we don't pay, teachers don't earn as much as, you know, like... this whole thing of 2008 when loads of people got laid off as lawyers and ended up becoming teachers because like that was the only job they could get. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they're taking half their salary because they don't get paid that well.
Well, there's a national teacher crisis and it's not just to do with pay, but that is a part of it. Because like I say, when I was talking about all the overtime that you have to do working in your holidays, weekends, evenings, like I got so physically ill before I left teaching. Physically ill, I did not have time to go to the doctors because it was like, oh, I can't take another day off because it's my kids who will suffer. And even if I took a day off, I have to send in cover work. So like, there's actually no point. So it's not just the money, that's part of it. It's the fact that they're working in such poor conditions. The fact that now we're teaching 35 kids in a class, you're not able to help the kids in the way that you wanted to. My best friends have left the profession altogether. My friends have moved to Dubai to go and teach over there so they get more money. You've got my sister who moved to the private sector.
If you feel like you're not doing your job well, you can't do it anymore.
It's heartbreaking. It's really when you join the profession, none of us joined for the glory. None of us joined because we thought we'd become millionaires at the end of it. You joined because you cared about the kids. You genuinely wanted to help them. You wanted to teach your subject. You wanted to help young people grow into really great young adults. And when you can't do that, I don't know how to get across like how disheartening it is when you are giving everything you have physically got. And I mean in terms of time, but also I'm going to give you another morbid example. So one break time, we were all sent out a message on the register and it said, you need to all come to the staff room. We went down and we were told one of our students was running for the bus in the morning, hit by the bus and died.
God, the literal proverbial
15 minutes later, hit by a bus. And unfortunately, he has died. I'll never forget that moment. It was near where when I left. 10 minutes later, I had to stand in front of a class who are all looking at me with their own sets of problems. Someone's house got raided the night before by the police at 2 a.m. They're tired. Someone else, whatever has happened. They're looking to me to brighten up their day and to give them some sort of respite. I always say you can leave your problems at the door. When you're here, it's your safe space. I've got to then, like the emotional toll that takes on you. And then you're going home after you've had that day and you haven't had a second to cry yet. And you are then doing the marking and the planning for the following day and you're falling asleep in your books and you've got no social life. I had 22 women in my faculty. None of us were married. If we were, we got divorced and none of us had children. And if we were, then we didn't get to spend any time with them. And then you see your friend who's in a different job who are getting like bonuses for something, who are able to buy a house, who are able to, and you just think this is, for how long can I keep doing this as a vocation? For how long can I keep doing this for the good of the world? Like at some point, I've got to think about myself.
What do you think of the thing? It's like it comes from the West Wing originally. The idea that you kind of pay people to work for a couple of years as teachers. Like really, you know, high flyers that are going to then go into banking or go into something else, but it's almost like voluntary service, but you pay them. And they teach for a couple of years and then they go and do something else.
I think it takes you a couple of years to even
work out
how to do it well. And I think if you come in with the intention that you're just going to leave and go to your high flying job, I think you're probably not going into teaching for the right reasons. Yeah. And what you need more people going into the job because they love and they want to educate and help and support young people. Well, you've really sold it to us, to be honest. I'm sorry. I do want to point out that it is also the best job in the world. Like, it's actually, when I left teaching and I solidly was just doing TV and media stuff for a good couple of years before I then realized I was like, this is soulless. And actually what I really miss is being with young people again and being able to teach them again. And I know it sounds wanky, but it's like, it's so rewarding. It's so satisfying. It genuinely fills your soul. Like, it's so good for you when it's good.
How are you fulfilling that now?
I now go back and volunteer in tuition centers and schools on every evening and day, including Saturdays and Sundays that I'm not working. And I had to do that for my own sanity,
to make you feel okay.
To make me feel okay, because going from something as soul nourishing as teaching and then moving into something else like TV where there's none of that, it was actually a very difficult move, because it is the most beautiful job. Working with young people is the most rewarding and wonderful thing ever. And I would recommend it for everyone if they were given good conditions to work.
I think, a really important part of this conversation is all employers out there. They're all desperately trying to find people. They're trying to bring in the young. The young couldn't be more, sort of like, I don't know, just not really feeling it these days. I don't know how to describe how they feel, but, because I'm not them, but there's, certainly there's a real huge diversity of attitudes and stuff. But do you think all those subjects are needed?
and I know me and my sister actually disagree on this, but I quite like the fact that we teach all these subjects in year 7 and 8 and 9, and then you get to choose the ones that you want to continue with, and you get to, I dropped history and geography and PE and often I think with young people, I think it's not actually the subject that they hate or love. It's the teacher that can make all the difference. So I think if at 12 you say you should have maths, even worse accent there, but if you say that, I think you haven't given them a full opportunity to really explore that subject with different people to see how they. And
it's amazing how one teacher at one point in your life who inspires you about that subject, it lasts.
I think the most amazing thing out of what you guys are saying is that teachers can say something 20, 30, 40 years ago, but the words stick. Yeah. And you do realize that sometimes you're a human being. You can say something as just a throwaway comment, and to that child, that will either build them or break them. Like anything that comes out of your mouth could be that changing moment for that child. So you've got to be very, very careful at what you say.
It's a big responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility. I worked in the opposite way. I remember when I was in year 11, my English teacher said at parents' evening, she said, and I didn't even know she liked me very much. And she said, I expect to see Mehreen's name in shining bright lights one day. And I never forgot. And sometimes, even in recent times, this is like 20 years on, if I'm having a really shit day or I'm feeling quite low, I'm feeling quite just like, giving up, I remember that and I think, fuck this. Remember who you are. Like, you've had this since you were young. Like, you can't give up now. And that it stays with me.
So you've given up, well, you're still teaching a bit, but you've kind of given up the full-time teaching. You're now media, full stop. What's the long-term goal?
The long-term goal is for me to mix my teaching experience, and that's what I truly love, with the platform that I have created, and will hopefully continue to create through my media work, put it all together and start my own school.
Ooh.
I think I would pick the subjects, I would plan the lessons, I'd recruit the teachers who genuinely love the kids and want to be there and want to help them. And I'll just give my kids so much love. And so much emotional support, and so much I'd make education fun. I think there's a big now, especially this is a generation that's grown up on social media, and they see that you can probably be they think that you can live a very lavish lifestyle full of luxury just by posting pictures on the internet or videos on YouTube. And so it makes it very difficult to engage those children and say, learn about maths or learn about English, because they're like, well, why do I need to bother? And I feel like for a generation that's grown up on social media, Glow Up Your Grades is trying to use social media, but make education feel relatable. I want them to watch someone and be like, I don't mind becoming a little bit like her, or actually she's a little bit like me, so maybe I can do this too, and make it just feel cool. I started Glow Up Your Grades last year, and it was because I thought I was 21 when I started teaching. I thought I was going to save the world. I thought I was going to save every child out there. Then I left. And now that I'm kind of going back into that education space, I'm like, how can I use my experiences so far to create something for young people at a time when they really, really need it? And that's why I started making these online resources. And that's why I don't know if I'm allowed to say, actually. I'm looking to expand Glow Up Your Grades into different places. So it's not just
Glow Up Your Grade.
Glow Up Your Grades.
I love it.
It's like
MC Vague. Glow Up Your Grade. It's great.
I love the idea, but I'm just curious. Did you ever, have you ever had a kid that you were like, it doesn't matter how much love I give this kid, he's a little shit?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've had lots of little shits.
Any names?
But I think I can only think of one student I ever taught where I thought, I actually don't like you very much. And I think no matter how much, the problem isn't that I'm not giving you enough love. I'm not showing you that I care for you, and I'm trying to show you respect. And actually, you're just not a very nice person.
Did you ever meet the parents? Did you ever meet the parents?
There were lots of issues at home, and that's why you always soften with so many of these kids. You realize there's a reason why they are the way they are. But he was the only kid that I said to a colleague, I said, if I met him on the high road with a group of friends in a shop, I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't feel like he would have that kind of thing in his head of, that's my teacher.
It didn't have those boundaries.
Yeah. I think it's the fact that what is going wrong for young people? Why is there an increase in crime? Why is there an increase of young people who have no value for life? It's because these kids don't feel valued. It's because you've been cutting the youth centres, cutting the youth services, cutting the pastoral support, making their schools a shit place to be for over 10 years now. And you're now seeing the impact of that, and it's only going to get worse. I think that's what's happening. And in whatever way that's kind of playing out, you've got to think of the root cause of why this is happening.
But if you don't see any future, you don't think that you'll ever own a house, you don't think you'll ever get a good job, you don't think there's really anything for you, why the fuck would you bother?
There are young people growing up with a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. They feel disenfranchised. They feel no sense of belonging. A lot of young people growing up with no good role models. A lot of people growing up watching their mothers or parents or families struggle. Lots of young people who feel the responsibility of putting food on the table,
looking after their siblings.
Exactly that. I remember I did a talk at Westminster once, and it was for 16 to 19-year-olds to get young people more engaged in politics. And I was with lots of MPs, and the MPs stood up on stage and they said, write me a letter, I'm always available for you. And everyone in the audience just looked like they wanted to fall asleep. And then one young girl put her hand up, stood up, and she said, the reason why I don't care about politics or politicians is because the only time you guys will care about someone like me, someone who looks like me, is when you hear my name in the news because something terrible has happened to me. And it was a real kind of eye-opener at how a lot of young people feel about the state of politics in this country. I don't know.
What do you think you've got wrong? What's your biggest mess up, and what do you think it taught you?
I think there was a period between leaving teaching and where I'm at right now where I felt really out of place in the media industry. The majority of people in the institution where I was predominantly working, the events that I was going to, they were not from a similar background to mine. They would be having conversations where I felt like I had nothing to offer, nothing to add. It didn't interest me. I had no knowledge about it. I remember sitting at one dinner and they were talking about, rhubarb is back in fashion. And they said, no way, I didn't know rhubarb was
love rhubarb.
And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is everyone talking about rhubarb? This is not a party. Like, I don't know what's happening right now. And I think I really lost my confidence. And I had a couple of years where I really started thinking about myself as a brand. Everyone would say, like, what's your brand? And I was almost like turning myself into this commodity, like objectifying myself, thinking of myself as a brand, trying to get my social media up, trying to think about how I can create content that would match this brand. And then trying to talk about rhubarb or just not say anything at all. And I lost my voice. And my voice was my most powerful asset my whole life. Like no one could ever stop me from saying how I felt.
No one fucks with the voice, man.
But the voice was fucked with. And I think that was a real low point for me. And that's a part of why I then went back into education and thought I need to kind of find myself again. And the way to do that is through working with young people again. You need to kind of anchor
yourself in something.
And I think that was my fuck up. It was like trying to be someone I'm not, or trying to impress people that I really don't need to impress. A lot of these people who speak the loudest or speak the fanciest, who sit around these tables with you, they're not necessarily better than you or more knowledgeable and wise than you at all. And that's a real reminder.
Never be intimidated by other people's brand.
Just for clarity, rhubarb is one of the most delicious things on the planet.
By the way, if you had rhubarb, alcoholic rhubarb snaps or whatever it's called, like rhubarb liqueur, it's incredible.
I've been to Orkney and that's all they make.
Oh, is it?
Yes. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
In life about anything?
Yes.
Oh, Leslie Joseph, I was doing the pilgrimage with her. So we were walking together for 3 weeks and she said to me, today is the tomorrow you were worried about and all is well.
Hang on.
Today is the tomorrow you were worried about.
Yeah.
And all is well.
Yeah.
I mean, your industry isn't even in education now. You're in media now.
I am.
You're in media.
I'm in media.
Oh, darling. Oh, darling.
I hate it.
I really need a drink, actually. Anyway, what do you think is bullshit in your industry then?
All of it. I absolutely despise it.
Really?
Yeah. God, I'm in it now and
Don't hold back.
I'm not a quitter, so I'm going to keep going. And until I feel like I've really kind of made my mark in it.
You got a BAFTA? What more do you want?
I don't really know what I'm aiming for. I know I'm not quite there yet. If I left right now, I'd feel like I'm quitting and leaving because I don't like something. So I can't let myself leave yet. But God, this is not my forever.
Why did you quit? What was the...
It happened completely by accident. So it happened completely by accident. I loved my job. I had just been promoted into a senior role. And at the same time, I was at work and something happened at work that really pissed me off that morning. I had a free period and I remember, it's so weird, in a moment of madness, I was in the English office and I thought, I'm going to write about what just happened. And I wrote something. It was nothing particularly clever or profound. It was called Why I'm Not Married. And I wrote this kind of article. They say I used to be a blogger, but I didn't even know what blogging was. I just wrote this article and I thought, God, I love writing. And I thought this is really good. That night I put it up on my Facebook for my friends to see it. And I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning and people in Uganda and Kazakhstan were reading it. And the BBC had left a message on it saying, can you please call us? We want to talk to you about a new documentary that we are doing.
Wow, viral.
So I fell into it. I spoke to them and they pitched the idea of Muslims Like Us, which sounded horrific. So I said no. And they were really, really persistent, which I'm very grateful for now. But at the time I was not having it. And they were like, for 3 months, they were like, can we come to your house and meet your family about like, what are you apprehensive about? Or you just want to talk about what concerns you have? And it was when the executive producer came to my house, and this was about 3 months in, when he left, my dad really got on with him. And when he left, my dad said, what are you worried about? And I said, they're going to stick me in a house with 9 other Muslims who are going to tell me I can't be Muslim because I've got nails and my hair is showing. I just don't fancy doing that, really.
It doesn't feel like a hugely positive experience.
Why would anyone put themselves through that? And my dad said, I didn't raise you to be weak. I didn't raise you to be stupid. I remember. And he said, opportunities don't come round forever.
Yeah.
So you need to grab it while you can. And I called them that day and I said, I'll do it. I went
Was that the start of 8 Mile?
Yeah. Fucking you got it. That's what that song's about. It's like, when you get an opportunity, take it,
Yeah.
Mom spaghetti.
Yeah.
No, I agree, man. And your dad gave you great advice. It says huge things about him
And was
because
it that
because
bad?
clearly your dad would be even more, from Pakistani Muslim culture, which is, as you say,
I mean, he's kind of wild
it lacks
anyway.
a sense of humor at times, I would say.
My dad is wild. He's really politically incorrect, but he's very, very honest, no bullshit, just says it how it is. And when he was like, you should do this, I called them and told them I'll do it. Went to my head teacher the next day, who was amazing. He was like,
it's good to have, so, you have an experience you can have a voice about,
My head teacher said, be very careful because I don't want the media to abuse you. I was young. I'm like in my 20s and I'm just like here to save the world.
Darling.
And I was like, don't worry, I'll be absolutely fine. And I did it. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Loved the show. Then obviously we won the BAFTA. Then I did the acceptance speech one night. The following morning I was doing a GCSE masterclass at 7:00. Hannah Montana'd it for a year because I couldn't just up and leave my job for something if I didn't know it was going to pay me properly, have stability. When I realized after the BAFTA speech that I had enough, it was secure enough for me to leave, I resigned that September and decided to do this full time.
So this is the 10-second quickfire round.
Oh dear. Okay.
We're going to give you about 10 seconds. We're going to ask you a load of questions, get to know you a little better. You've got about 10 seconds to answer. D, cue the music.
What was your first job?
I was teaching in a Saturday tuition centre.
That's a lot of teaching. What was your worst job?
That's the only job I ever had before I became a teacher.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was your worst job? Worst.
That's the only job I've had.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But what, as in
I volunteered in a tuition centre. I finished my degree. I went straight into teaching.
Naturally, teaching was the worst
teaching
job.
was your worst job. Glad we cleared that up.
Okay, so the worst job, it was probably my couple of years of making documentaries. I didn't love that.
Favourite subject at school?
English.
What's your special skill? The voice, motherfucker. Kneel to the voice. MCV.
I don't know, this isn't literally a skill and I'm not good at being fun, but I think I'm really good at speaking to all people. I mean, do you know what I mean? I feel like I can speak to different types of people.
If you can walk with kings and speak, what was the line?
I'm trying to think what mine is, but when I was younger, I used to be able to balance a pint on my tits, but I don't think I can do that anymore.
Maybe you can.
No, not since they've gone that way.
Anyway. It's a good question. Well, we'll do our podcast one day. We're going to smash it up with your tits balancing.
Yeah. Whose go is it?
What did you want to be when you grew up?
A doctor.
Oh.
What did your parents want you to be?
My parents wanted me to be a doctor, so by default, I thought I was going to be a doctor. My secret dream was always to be in musical theatre.
That's
wow.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Musical theatre.
Yeah.
But that's very sort of towing the line. My parents want me to be a doctor.
That's an excellent segue to my next question. What's your go-to karaoke song? This is musical theatre.
My Heart Will Go On.
Ooh, I don't know that song.
Titanic.
Oh, come on.
Really? How's it go? Anyway.
I'm not singing it.
Yes, I'll sing
You
it.
could, I mean...
You like singing?
You like musical theatre. You should maybe give it a go. No.
Oh, no, not right now.
My favourite films are musicals. Bugsy Malone, Blues Brothers. Anyway.
Hamilton.
Grease.
Good team. Well done. Smashing it.
Office Dogs. I think I know your answer to this. Business or bullshit?
Office Dogs? Bullshit.
Oh, no, he's not there. Where is he?
Probably by me somewhere. Is he near me? Yeah.
He loves you.
He's very sweet. It's called Romeo. He'll be nice. What's your vice?
Since I hit my 30s, I get angry. I get really angry. And I used to be really patient. I think this is, again, I left teaching, I lost my patience. I'm not patient with bullshit anymore. I get angry. And that's probably the worst thing about me.
Some days it takes me twice as long to get to work because I have to keep stopping to tweet because I listen to the Today programme on the way.
That's an excellent answer of what's wrong with you, but it's not your vice. You have an outlet, singing then or something. I mean, vice is kind of like, how do you keep yourself sane?
If you get angry to an extreme, then that is a vice.
That's how you deal with it. You go and you do some
Yeah, I will shout. I will shout and not listen to the other. I'm a shouter.
Oh, a shouter.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, very good. That's the end of the quickfire round.
Is it?
And have you got any recommendations on things we should read or watch?
Oh
or
my
listen
goodness.
to?
Yes. Okay. I've got lots of book recommendations, but recently I read a book which isn't a new book, but I only just read it recently and it's become my new favorite book. My favorite book now is One Day, and it's about a boy and a girl who meet it's about a boy and a girl on their graduation night, and they're kind of talking about, where do you think we're going to be when we're like 30 or when we're like, and he's like, oh, don't say that. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that.
He's an absolute asshole, basically.
He is, yeah. But then, so you follow them every year for the next 20 years, and it really makes you think, particularly like I'm 33. And it really makes you think about how you don't, before you know it, you are 30. And before you know it, life is nothing like what you thought it would be.
It's a little bit normal people, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's just beautiful. It's tragic. It really makes you reflect about your own life and where you thought you would be and how life just takes you in these twists and turns, but without ever seeming dramatic. And it's just, you end up somewhere that you never thought you would be, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. I think it's absolutely beautiful with a rushed ending.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you podcast at all? Do you listen to podcasts?
I have a podcast.
You have a podcast. Do you want to plug the podcast quick?
I love my podcast. It was called The Secret Life of Teachers on Radio 4. And it was basically during the pandemic when everyone had an opinion about teachers. And I thought, let's get behind the headlines and see what's really going on in schools. And so I used to have a group of 3 teachers with me every episode, and we just talk about what's happening in school.
Was it just horror stories?
It was a mixture of, it's very funny and I think a bit shocking and a bit sad at times. I loved Serial.
I loved Serial.
Loved Serial.
Particularly the first season. The other seasons are fine.
Yeah.
First season. Amazing.
Yeah. Little bit obsessed with that. I love a bit of My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I like that too. That's good.
Yeah. I think we can all agree on that. I haven't listened to it for ages.
Apparently there's a new
It's just the fact they're giggling the entire
I know,
time. And we're
but
all
so am
giggling
I.
because it's
Like, you walk along laughing.
British people just can't cope with that. Like, we're so repressed.
This, Mehreen, brings us to our favourite part of the show.
Okay.
Which is the business or bullshit quiz. DQ the music. So this is where we'll list a bunch of terms and phrases typically used in business, and all you have to do is tell us whether you think it's business or bullshit.
And you may discuss.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. Andy?
ESG investing.
What the fuck
That
does
is
that mean?
investing in, environment, social governance. Fucking governance.
So is that like caring about the environment?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll call that
Green investing.
I'll call that business. We want to care about the environment.
Yeah.
Company health insurance. I'm guessing teachers don't get that. Or do they?
No, company health insurance.
So that's private health insurance that companies provide to people.
Wow, if everyone had that, that would be business, but they don't, so it's bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like it.
China.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, careful what you say. Apparently they got people everywhere, the man told us yesterday. They got people everywhere. You may want to expand your school.
I'm going to say China is business because like a lot of business stuff happens in China.
I'm slightly worried that this one's a euphemism for something, but I'm just going to roll with it.
Walking the dog.
Working in your garden.
Working in your garden.
You're thinking wanking in your garden.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking.
I mean,
We've all been there.
I'm going to call that
ploughing a field is what I was thinking of.
working in your garden.
Is that fucking?
I think I'm going to call that bullshit. I think that's not real working if you're working in your
TikTok.
garden. Oh, bullshit. Bullshit. Poison.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You say that. I need to discuss that one as an educator because my experience of TikTok, the few hours I've used it, is it's just like an hour just go and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And I feel soulless and empty.
Yeah.
But like,
also the stuff
someone
that goes...
said to me, we had a guy on this show a very long time ago who was a media expert. Said, you can learn so much. He said you can learn about how to do pools or something, swimming pools. Yeah. Anyway, but I mean, is it not educational?
I think lots of people do learn from it, but what are they learning from it is the question. And is it always facts that they're learning from it? And I think that the unfortunate world that we live in...
We're so too old.
The unfortunate world we live in means it's very easy to go viral and make your business blow, make your podcast blow on TikTok. But I just think it's really a sad state of affairs that we are there. And I think I sometimes go on TikTok. So I've got it. I used it before the GCSEs to do like predictions and things like that. Then I stopped. I'll probably go back on it to do some more education stuff to reach young people.
As an educator, you feel it's
setting
people back. It's poison.
Yeah.
It's setting people back.
Staff no dating policies.
Oh, I would have been fired. I'll call that bullshit.
Well, given that you've just described that you spend...
Do you know what's
Everyone
really funny
dates
is
each other. Teachers always date each other.
No, but because you're spending every hour you have in
Where else
school.
do you want me to meet someone? I don't go anywhere, so I have to date a
managed
teacher.
to have sex in the office, and I think anyone who's managed to do it, I've said it many times, hats off to them. This is ever since you told me that Boris Johnson had a blowjob, and I was like, fucking good for him.
No,
well
but
done,
the
Boris.
reason for that,
I couldn't give a
Andy,
shit. I mean, Boris is an arsehole lying
is
bastard.
because generally
well done on the
accountants
blowjob.
and
Never say
lawyers,
Boris and blowjob in the same
went right
sentence
up.
again.
His productivity went right up after that.
but that technically is because, you know, generally, and this is a wide generalisation, but lawyers and accountants are not that attractive.
Oh yeah, that's a wide generalisation.
And also, like, when you're at your peak...
Is that why you're saying I haven't had sex in the office? I mean, these are our offices too. I've got the keys. If anyone should be having sex in the office,
when you're at
it's
your
me.
peak, desperate to have sex every minute, like in your 20s, and a young lawyer or accountant, all the people you could potentially have sex with tend to be like in their 50s and you don't want to have sex with
I
them.
love these theories. These theories are great. You know what I need to do? I need to drive the wife down here and have some really awkward sex just to tick it off.
Yeah, you
and literally
do.
have a clipboard at the end and
Just
be like,
let us know so that we
like,
don't
right,
come in.
Are we done?
Like,
yeah, thanks, babe. That was great. You
Could
know.
everybody work from home next Tuesday? Because I'm bringing my wife in.
I'm bringing my wife in.
Sure they
Is
clean
it my
the
go or
room.
your go?
Uh,
Your go.
Search engine optimization.
What does that mean? Is that like, so your company
Fuck,
comes to
just
the
say
top?
SEO. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like SEO. Yeah. It's like, you know.
Okay, but I don't. Business?
Yeah, it's a crap one.
Okay.
Silicon Roundabout.
What?
That's the roundabout in Shoreditch. That's this.
Okay.
You didn't even know.
What, the old street roundabout?
Yeah.
Okay.
It naturally transpired. You know,
They've just got loads and loads of IT businesses around.
They got loads of IT. It's all the people who are like in startups and you know.
I'll call it bullshit.
Yeah,
I don't know it. I don't care about it.
Right wing.
Right wing.
Fucking bullshit. Let's call that. Let's call that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, look! It's a match. It's a pair. Conservative government.
Call that fucking fuck off. That's what we call that.
A current government, you know, for all conservative governments of all time.
Fucking fuck right off.
Thatcher,
Bullshit.
milk snatcher.
I say you've got into prejudice now. You can't go back 200 years. We need a history book to work out whether they're all
Absolute
terrible.
bullshit nonsense. Get it out my face. I can't stand it.
Wow.
Under promise, over deliver.
Conservative government again.
No, that's
other way
over
around.
promise,
It's the other way
under
around.
The other way
deliver.
around.
I call it bullshit. I don't want to. I think under promise is like self-deprecating.
Intrapreneurship. What the fuck
you
is
spell
I don't know what it is
Entrepreneurship
either. I
wrong?
kind of wanted to discuss Entrepreneurship is when you. Entrepreneurship
Can I
is,
Google it?
Yeah, Google it. I think it's when within a corporate you develop people who are going to be able to be entrepreneurial, like able to be.
Intrapreneur, a manager within a company who promotes innovative product development and marketing.
Isn't that just what a manager's supposed to do though?
Ideally,
So why
you
are we
would
giving
think.
it a fancy name? Bullshit.
Bullshit. Language barriers.
As in,
You know, you just.
some people have language barriers.
Well, there's language barriers. I
Speaking
guess
French.
is it? Yeah, we'll move on.
Okay.
Loving what you do.
Business. Wouldn't that be what lovely? Yeah.
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 But doesn't someone have to work in an abattoir?
Yeah, but maybe they like it.
Oh, it's kinky. That's the theory I heard that you know there's someone who likes
You grow
everything.
to like everything.
So, I just like blood and guts going everywhere. And to be fair, you know, my wife used to like watching horror films with blood and guts. I know the answer to this, but let's just see the result. Let's just see the reaction. Offshore tax havens.
Oh.
Fuck the fuck off.
You have to say it.
Oh, fuck the fuck off. Bullshit.
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 MBAs.
MBAs?
Management.
Master of Business Administration came out. I looked this up the other day. 1910 they were invented, somewhere around there in America.
It's just like
They're
a
very popular.
postgraduate degree that loads of
Everybody,
people get.
as an education person, you definitely need to know what an MBA is, darling. It's a very.
We'll call it bullshit.
It is.
We'll call it bullshit.
Having more than one career or job.
Some people have to.
You appear
Business.
to be doing that right now.
Yeah.
Finally, fake it till you make it.
I think everyone has to. Business. Everyone has to at some point. I've definitely been doing that last few years.
Boom! So there you have it. That was it. Congratulations. That was 3,212 points. You did incredibly well.
Did I win?
You did win.
Well, in 2026, we will
prize.
announce
I just
the
like
winners.
winning.
We will decide what is business or bullshit, and we all have to live like that. From then on, we will launch our political party and establish a new way of life. It will be brilliant.
So this is where we give you 30 seconds to plug whatever you would like to plug, your podcast, whatever.
Glow Up Your Grades is a digital series. It's 50 videos along with other shorter videos to go with them where students can learn everything they need to know to pass their English, language and literature GCSEs just by watching those videos. And if teachers also want to use them so that they don't have to plan 50 of their lessons, then they can use them too. So it's there to make the lives of students and teachers and schools easier. I wrote the videos myself. I was part of the editing process myself. They are all handcrafted. I've been an examiner for 10 years. They will teach you everything you need to know, and everyone should subscribe and watch it.
Fantastic.
Blow up.
I feel like that was more than 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you very much.